not push the button. You have no idea what it...
Terrain.
When Gaijin first added the Premium F-18, I was incredibly disappointed. While the plane itself wasn't necessarily bad, the matchmaker was genuinely awful. Constant up-tiers paired with an insane amount of BR compression resulted in this jet being, well, shit.
Bruh.
However, recently we finally got some BR changes that decompressed 13.0 plus, which made 12.7 actually playable. This, paired with the release of 2 more Premium Hornets, prompted me to give these jets another try. And oh man, am I glad I did. Still, given just how expensive these things are, I assume many of you are probably wondering if these Premium Hornets are truly worth it, and if so, which one should you buy? But before I go on to review these jets and answer those questions, I first want to show you this, my decal. Considering most of you are War Thunder players, many of you are probably wondering,
What the fuck is this?
well, it's a girl. An anime girl. Now, I know some of you might be going, wow, another content creator with an anime decal? So creative. To which I say, cope. And if you too just want to tell people to cope, then click on the first link in the description, buy something on the Gaijin store, and proceed to plaster GB, that's her name by the way, GB, all over your tanks, your boats, your helicopters, and your aircraft. Don't put her on bombers though, fuck bombers. As of right now, there are 3 Premium Hornets in War Thunder. There's the F-18C Early for the American tech tree, the Swiss F-18C for the German tech tree, and the Canadian Wi-Fi password for the British tech tree. In many aspects, these 3 jets are identical. Not only do they all sit at rank 8 with a battle rating of 12.7, but more importantly, they also share the exact same airframe. When you take any of these jets into a test flight, you'll quickly find they're capable of pulling a hilarious amount of AOA, and when you pair that with some amazing control surface authority, you end up with an airframe that feels incredibly responsive, snappy, and agile, which obviously results in the Premium Hornets being some amazing dogfighters. Right? No. While the Legacy Hornets are indeed very maneuverable, that maneuverability comes at the cost of atrocious energy retention, which, paired with relatively high wing loading, results in the Premium F-18s having turn performance that is comparatively bad. Like, impressively bad. Thus, while these jets are very fun to throw around, in any kind of sustained dogfight they're at a severe disadvantage. However, at 12.7, such dogfights are rare. Instead, most kills are scored either through very quick one-circle engagements or through missile combat. And the latter is where these F-18s get interesting. Besides the amazing 20mm Vulcan, these jets come armed with 2 types of air-to-air missiles, the AIM-9L and the AM-7P. The heat-seeking all-aspect 9Ls are kinematically perfect, but unfortunately they're also quite situational, as the lack of IRCCM makes them relatively easy to flare. The AIM-7P is a lot more versatile. These semi-active radar homing missiles are fast, agile, have respectable range, and require the enemy to put in some serious effort when evading. As such, especially paired with the excellent radar of the Premium F-18s, these missiles are very powerful. Though, that's not to say the AM-7B is perfect. Not only are there objectively better radar missiles available at 12.7, but also note that these are semi-active radar homing, which means you must maintain an active radar lock for these missiles to track a target. This can be a liability, especially when facing off against jets carrying much more advanced self-guiding active radar homing missiles. Long story short, while both these missiles are good, they're not the best in class. Instead, what makes the air-to-air loadout of the Premium Hornets truly stand out is the sheer quantity of these missiles that they can carry. Depending on loadout, these jets can pack up to 10 air-to-air missiles, the most out of any 12-7 aircraft. Though the more meta configuration consists of only 2 AM-9Ls and 6 AM-7Ps. In this arrangement, these jets carry almost 3 times as many radar missiles as, for example, the F-16AJ or MiG-29. Thus, while the Premium F-18s might suffer from subpar flight performance, they make up for this through raw firepower. So, offensively, these Hornets are great. But what about defense? All 3 of these get the exact same radar warning receiver. Its coverage isn't perfect, which you have to account for, but besides that, is good. Like many other fighters at 12.7, these jets get 60 countermeasures, all of which release individually. While this is usually enough, it's still important to deploy your flares and chaff sparingly. Unfortunately, doing so can be quite challenging, as around 12.7 missile spam is the meta, which leads us nicely onto the gameplay loop of these aircraft. At this battle rating, matches are super fast-paced and action-packed, which is good, but there are some side effects. For one, a lot of the matches played around this battle rating will feel very similar, which means that the overall experience of playing one of these premiums can be quite repetitive. Another effect of fast-paced matches is the relatively low RP earned per game. However, as you can also play more matches within a given time period, these jets still end up earning a pretty decent amount of RP per hour. And when you combine this with the fact that these are rank 8 premiums, meaning they can be used to research all the way from reserve to top tier, you end up with a set of aircraft that are genuinely great for grinding. With that said, I'd like to move on to the next part of this video. But before we do so, let's quickly recap. While this airframe feels incredibly responsive, terrible energy retention makes the premium F-18s some pretty awful dogfighters. However, these jets more than make up for this through the sheer quantity of missiles they can carry. Pair that with decent countermeasures, action-packed matches, and a reasonable matchmaker, and the result is that these premiums are not just good at grinding, they're also genuinely enjoyable to play. And with all of that in mind, I'd like to circle back to the central questions of this video. First, are the premium F-18s truly worth buying? Yes, compared to many of the other rank 7-8 premiums currently for sale in War Thunder, I believe these premium F-18s offer some genuinely good value. Thus, if you're comfortable with spending $80 on a pixel plane and you want to buy yourself a cool jet, then by all means any one of these three is worth it. And that brings us on to question 2. Which one of the premium F-18s should you buy? Throughout this video, I've reviewed all three of these jets as if they are exactly the same, which they're not. Both the Canadian license plate and the American F-18C Early are indeed identical. However, the Swiss variant is a little bit different. At the expense of slightly more weight, this version gets better engines, a better radar, and 120 total countermeasures. Meaning that out of these three premiums, the Swiss F-18C is objectively the best in terms of performance. However, while the improvements are definitely noticeable, in the bigger picture they're basically meaningless. In fact, these three jets are arguably all equally as competitive, fun to play, and good at grinding. And therefore, I recommend you just buy whichever one of these sits in the tech tree that you find the most interesting. So if you want to grind the US, buy the F-18C Early. If you want to grind through Germany, buy the Swiss F-18C. And if you want to grind through Britain, go see a psychiatrist. Either way, remember that if you use my affiliate link, you'll not only help support my channel, but you also get yourself a small discount as well as my decal. Anyway, now it's time to move on to the next chapter of this video. So far, I've given a basic review of the Premium Hornets and I've explained whether or not I think you should buy one. However, I've yet to showcase what these jets actually play like, nor have I talked about many of the more intricate nuances of these aircraft. And so, throughout the remainder of this video, I'm simply going to be yapping over some gameplay. However, before I get into a match, I first want to discuss one more thing while I'm in the hangar. Just like every other jet around this battle rating, these Hornets benefit massively from an experted crew, and if you can't yet buy that qualification because your crew level is too low, then please consider spending some of the Golden Eagles you get along with one of these premiums on accelerating your crew training. I know it might not seem like it's worth it, but trust me, a good crew makes a huge difference to how fun these jets are to play. With that said, now let's actually look at some gameplay. As you can see in the footage in the background, I'm effectively charging directly into the enemy team while lobbing sparrows at anyone above 50 meters and trying to stay below multipath height myself. While this is definitely not the only viable playstyle for the Premium Hornets, it's by far the one where you can score the most kills in the least amount of time. But of course, the trade-off is that you have to sacrifice your own positioning, and doing so in this matchmaker can be extremely treacherous. For example, in the gameplay here, what's gonna end up happening is that an enemy loops around and shoots an IR missile at me from behind, which in the Premium Hornets is a big problem as these jets are incredibly hot. Thus, even non-IRCCM missiles like this AM-9L can be very difficult to flare. Earlier in the video, I explained that these jets have horrible energy retention, and while for the most part that's a massive problem, you can sometimes also use it to your advantage. For example, this Mirage is going to try to force me to overshoot, and after I completely fumble my first pass, I hit the funny button, trade in basically all of my energy for instant turn, fling the nose around, and brrr, there goes his wing. Now, while I have to admit this kill was very satisfying, keep in mind it was only a Mirage F1C, which sits at a much lower battle rating. If you were to try the same trick with a fighter at 12.7 or higher, you're likely gonna have a lot less success. And actually, that brings us onto the discussion of the 12.7 matchmaker. At the time of recording, 12.7 is a remarkably healthy battle rating. While full up tiers do happen, and trust me, they're painful, down tiers are also fairly common. In fact, a lot of the games I played in this jet were 11.7 to 12.7. And in those games, these things are absolute monsters. And while I've captured plenty of footage to prove this, honestly, all of that footage is incredibly boring to watch because most of it looks exactly like this. There's just some poor schmuck down on the deck not really paying that much attention. I lock onto them with my radar, fire a sparrow, and well, boom. Now, just to be clear, when I say this footage looks boring, I'm not saying the actual gameplay is boring. In fact, I genuinely enjoyed playing all three of these premiums. Though, that said, my favorite one was by far the Swiss variant. Not because it's subjectively the best premium F-18, but rather because in this plane I had the most wacky moments. Exhibit A, this dogfight with a J-10. Honestly, I think this footage speaks for itself, so instead I'll use this time to discuss that all three of the premium F-18s don't get a helmet-mounted sight. In case you don't know, a helmet-mounted sight, or HMS, makes it possible to point your radar or missiles directly at a specific point in the sky, allowing you to lock onto enemies even if they've never been directly in front of your aircraft, and that can be incredibly useful, especially around this battle rating. That said, while a helmet-mounted sight is very nice to have, for the premium F-18s, it's definitely not necessary. In fact, because these jets get a very tall ACM mode, it's still possible to lock onto jets like this F2A that are very high above the nose of the aircraft. And quick tip, if you don't want to have to change the exact ACM scope every time you spawn in, then before you load into a match, make sure that you select ACM PD as your radar mode and 4x74 as the radar search mode. That way, even if you change to, for example, TWS or standard search and track after you've spawned in, anytime you switch back to ACM, it'll already be set up exactly the way you want it. The last thing I want to talk about are the air-to-ground capabilities of these Premium Hornets. For one, if you must bomb bases in air-realistic battles, then yes, these jets will be able to do so. However, keep in mind that carrying enough bombs to destroy a base with one of these jets means that you have to sacrifice some of your air-to-air missiles, and in my opinion, doing so simply isn't worth it. For CAS, these jets are a bit more interesting. At a ground RB battle rating of 12.3, these jets can function remarkably well as close air support. Don't get me wrong, they're not perfect. In fact, if you're gonna run into something like a Eurofighter or a Typhoon, you are definitely not gonna have a good time, but given that you can carry up to 4 IR-guided Mavericks on these jets, they can still be used relatively effectively to take out some enemy tanks. Thus, if you're primarily a ground player and you're looking for a fun premium jet with which you can not only grind an entire air tech tree, but also one that you can use as close air support for your ground lineup, then the premium F-18s will fit into that role quite nicely. With that said, thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe, join my Discord server, and if you enjoyed watching this video, then consider also watching the one that's currently shown to you on screen. It's a little bit different, but kind of the same, so I think you'll enjoy that video as well.